Okay, Galactic Astrology Module 3, the aspects. So the aspects are really, really important part of astrology because they're going to show how the planets communicate and even how the signs can communicate based on which planets are in the signs. This is a really powerful step to understanding astrology because once you got the planets and the signs down, you've got the flavors and kind of the alphabet, but now with the aspects, you start speaking the language, you start spelling words, using verbs and adjectives. So the language of astrology. The aspects form the main language of astrology, allowing the planets to interact with each other via a 360-degree chart. There are a total of 5 major aspects, 6 minor aspects, and 3 spiritual aspects. These divide into 4 harmonious aspects, 5 disharmonious, and 5 neutral. Aspects allow the planets to send each other energy and create synergistic bonds. These bonds can be harmonious or disharmonious. However, both have their advantages and disadvantages. So the planets talk to each other through the aspects. They communicate with each other and they create positive communication and sometimes negative and challenging communication, which can be used for growth. So the major aspects are the most commonly used in astrology. And for a beginner, they're a very good place to start. So say, for instance, we finished this session and you guys might feel a little bit insecure about all of the aspects. If you want to get started using aspects, just focus on the major ones, which I will be showing. Using the major aspects will allow you to get a clear understanding of the chart without having to go into deep detail. So a lot of astrologers, even outside of galactic or new age astrology, use the basic major aspects. These are just universal. Everybody knows them and everyone uses them. They're very, very standard, where some of the others that I present are going to be a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more specialized. The minor aspects. So minor aspects are just as important as major aspects. However, they are not as commonly used. So in galactic astrology, which is the system of astrology that I'm teaching, they are important because many of them follow the harmonics of dividing the circle by the numbers 1 through 12, which is something that I mentioned before. So whenever you get an aspect, what you're doing is you're dividing the circle because the chart astrology charts are comprised of 360 degrees. And when you divide those 360 degrees by a number, you will get a percentage. And that will kind of form the angle that the planet is making. So for example, if you divide a 360 circle by 2, you will get 180, which is an opposition aspect. So dividing the circle by 2 gets you the opposition aspect, and the degree, which is the what the division equals, is 180 degrees. Then we have spiritual aspects. So the spiritual aspects are a little bit more interesting because they are a bit more fringe. Not many people use the spiritual aspects aside from more esoteric and experimental astrologers. Some astrologers might tell you that these are too subtle for the average person to detect, but being that galactic astrology is more esoteric in nature, we are able to tune into these very spiritual and subtle energies because they're just as real as the more physical, more dominant energies. Oftentimes, the spiritual energies and the more physical energies are interwoven in a sort of dance or a sort of spiral where they dance together, where they intermingle. So your more spiritual side may be reflected in your more active side within your natal chart. Spiritual aspects can be very interesting and useful in the understanding of the more metaphysical side of the chart and can indicate karmic and psychic energies as well. They often take more patience and skill to interpret and are not as nuanced as the more common aspects. Then we have harmonious aspects. So just to recap here, we've already divided the aspects into major, which are the more basic universal aspects, minor, which are also commonly used, but not as much, and then spiritual, which are more fringe aspects that are more metaphysical in nature. Now we have the harmonious aspects. So all of these aspects, categories that I mentioned before, can be categorized into harmonious, disharmonious, or neutral, which we'll be looking at. So the harmonious aspects specifically are ones that create a flow or an easy exchange of energy. The planets involved in harmonious aspects assist each other in achieving their goals. The harmonious aspects are the semi-sextile, which is 30 degrees, the sextile, which is 60 degrees, the quintile, which is 72 degrees, and the trine, which is 120 degrees. So all of these aspects are flowing, easy, may show some gifts or talents and opportunities. Disharmonious aspects, also known as challenging aspects, cause friction between the planets. They allow for change and developments to occur through the need to integrate polarities and solve disputes. The challenging aspects are semi-square, which is 45 degrees, the square, which is 90 degrees, sesquiquadrate, which is 135 degrees, the inconjunct, which is also called the quincunx. I will be changing those two terms for the 150-degree aspect, which is what it represents. And then the opposition, which is the 180-degree aspect. So oftentimes with challenging aspects, you might see a lot of astrologers talking about how, perhaps a square between Venus and Saturn is not favorable, or a square between Saturn and Mars is not favorable. And that may be true if you're looking at it in a very one-dimensional perspective. But if you take into account that every soul that incarnates, has a chart, and their chart is representative of what karma they need to work on, what lessons they need to overcome, then when you look at it that way, you can see that charts are not like, you're not doomed for having like a lot of difficult aspects in your chart. It may just be a very karmic lifetime where you have to work really hard on making some changes and developments. And the really amazing thing about the disharmonious or challenging aspects is that if you take them seriously and you put in the hard work, oftentimes, well, most of the time, you will reap the benefits of your success, of your hard work. You will have success as a result of, trying hard, putting in the continuous effort. And then I just do want to mention disharmonious aspects at times, they can cause a lot of trouble too. I don't want to completely sugarcoat it. It is about hard work, but if on the opposite end, if you don't do the hard work, it can cause a lot of difficulty in your life as well, and a lot of pressure. And sometimes we can see people who have like really perhaps negative tendencies, maybe more psychotic tendencies when they have like really intense aspects that come together. And we'll talk about that later. Then we have neutral aspects. So the neutral aspects are some of my favorite because they really kind of take on their own flavor, and they have their own way of expressing themselves. Like they're not inherently bad or inherently good. So they can take on whatever flavor the planets give them. Neutral aspects are ones that do not have a negative or positive effect. The effect is influenced by the planets involved and other patterns in the chart. The neutral aspects are the conjunction, which is 0 degrees, the elf-tile, which is not very well known, which is 32.73 degrees, the decile, which is also not very well known, which is 36 degrees, the novile is 40 degrees, and the septile is 51.73 degrees. So these aspects, some of them are spiritual and some of them are a minor and major. They are more, they just have an effect that kind of guides the planets in a certain direction, but it's not necessarily good or bad. And the planets that are involved are really going to affect how that plays out. and how that happens. Because say, for instance, you have like Mars in an aspect with another planet in any of these neutral aspects, then it would be very aggressive, and Mars does have the tendency to be more violent or more pushy. So it could have a bad effect if Mars is not well connected with a good planet that's a good outlet for its energy, for example. And then on the other hand, if you have, let's say, Jupiter in an aspect with another planet, in a neutral aspect with another planet, then it might be really good because Jupiter is very expansive. It's about growth, about wealth, knowledge, insight, travel, etc. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to decode all of the aspects. So first, we're going to start off with the major aspects, okay? I have the symbol on the left-hand side, and then I have the details on the right. So the conjunction is 0 degrees. So this is when two planets are together. They are right next to each other. This orb, or how far away they can be away from each other and still be a part of the conjunction, is about 10 degrees, and it goes up to about like maybe 12 or 13 degrees if you include the sun and the moon, because if the sun and the moon are involved in a conjunction, it is believed that they cast rays, so the rays reach out to the planet a little further than a normal planet would. So the conjunction is 0 degrees. It is dividing the circle by itself. So 360 degrees divided by 360 degrees, which is also represented by 1 divided by 1. The conjunction is a neutral aspect, okay? So it's really, the flavor of the aspect is going to depend on what the planets make it and what the other aspects are in the chart. The conjunction is a blending of energies that fuses the two planets together, allowing for a singular expression of their identities. So the two planets get put together. This is really powerful. One of probably the most powerful aspect that astrologers will consider in the chart is the conjunction, because like these two planets, like they share an identity, they become one, they become fused together. Then we have the sextile. The sextile is 60 degrees, and it is the circle divided by 6. This is a harmonious aspect, okay? These planets are friends and support each other in their goals and expressions. This exchange of energy allows mutual benefit to each planet involved and can provide opportunities for growth. So think of the sextile aspect as like a handshake or a business deal, or a really good friend, you know, someone that you can really trust, and that boosts your confidence and you boost their confidence. Then we have the square aspect. The square aspect is 90 degrees, and it is a circle divided by 4. This is a challenging aspect, one of the more popular challenging aspects that you will see astrologers discuss. It is a call to action as a result of a crisis between two planets. Each planet fights for attention and authoritative action, resulting in the inability to move forward. Patience and dedication must be given in order to allow each planet to shine and function symbiotically. So oftentimes what happens with these two planets is that they are in a race with each other. Like one is fighting for control, and then the other comes up and fights for control, and it's like they're butting heads so much that their expression becomes like warped. So for example, if you have Saturn square Venus, like whenever Venus goes to express itself as Venus's beauty and joy and love, Saturn will say, no, you need to work harder, because Saturn is about hard work. So Venus never fully feels the satisfaction of being happy and having joy, because Saturn's always telling her to work harder. And then vice versa with Saturn. Saturn's the planet of hard work, but every time Saturn works hard and puts in the work, Saturn feels empty, like he's not accomplishing anything, because Venus is missing, the joy is missing. So there has to be some sort of reconciliation where both of those things can exist together and be harmonious and copacetic. And that's a really difficult aspect to deal with. It does take a lot of time and patience to overcome. Then we have the trine aspect. So the trine aspect is 120 degrees. It is the circle divided by 3. This is the harmonious aspect. So the trine is a really, really good aspect. It's known as an easy aspect. This is an aspect that oftentimes, if you did like good deeds in a past life or you got really good at a skill in a past life, this aspect will show up in your chart as like a skill that you earned or something that you did good on. So you have it easy now. Perfect harmony between 2 planets, which are often in the same element, which allows graceful and easy flow of energy. Special gifts and skills can be found via the trine aspect. So it's a really positive aspect. One thing to be aware of with the trine, sometimes when people have a lot of trines in their chart, they can be a little lazy because they kind of just get things easily, so they don't have a lot of friction to work hard. Then we have the opposition. So the opposition is probably one of the most challenging aspects. It really probably is the most challenging aspect. Most astrologers will probably tell you that. It's 180 degrees and it is the circle divided by 2. I mentioned this earlier. So opposites fight for the spotlight, okay? And may often swing from one extreme to another. Known as one of the most difficult aspects, the opposition is one that requires balance and integration of polarity. So if you think about it this way, the opposition is like opposites attract, right? So like, let's say you have a really shy person and you have a really loud person, and sometimes the maybe friendship or relationship between them is really quiet because the shy person is really quiet, so they don't talk that much. And then all of a sudden, the talkative person is just talking so much, and it just keeps going back and forth. It's like swinging from extremes, not talking at all to talking way too much. And this can be a difficult energy to regulate because it feels like both of these planets will be ruling different parts of the chart. Like, let's say if one planet is in the northern portion or the northern hemisphere of the chart and one is in the southern hemisphere of the chart, one might have more to do with like your family, your home, your happiness, and one might have more to do with your career, and how those two things keep kind of fighting against each other for dominance and for control. So the opposition is definitely a tricky one. Okay, moving on to the minor aspects. So the minor aspects are a little bit more interesting, a little less cut and dry, and also have a lot of different interpretations to them. So these are my interpretations based off my research, from reading lots of articles from other astrologers and from my own experience in using these aspects and doing charts for people. So the semi-sextile, oh, and by the way, you may see, like, if you look up these aspects, that different people might have slightly different interpretations. So just putting that out there, these are my interpretations and those of other astrologers as well. So the semi-sextile is the first aspect that we have here. It is 30 degrees and it is dividing the circle by 12. It is a harmonious aspect. Some astrologers might tell you that it depends on the situation, whether it's harmonious or not, but in my experience, it's been harmonious. But we can look at it this way. The planets are agreeable and have a mutual understanding and they support each other's expression. So remember when we said that the sextile is like a friendship? Well, think of the semi-sextile as like a business friendship or like a colleague, like a coworker, because the semi-sextile will often, it's 30 degrees apart, so it's just one sign over. So it's right next to, the planets will be right next to each other. And that makes them, they're common, they understand each other's personality, they know each other's territory. So this could be like someone that you work with, or something that you're familiar with, but you're not like super buddy with them, you just associate in the same circles. That's kind of the metaphorical energy of the semi-sextile. And then we have the decile, which is 36 degrees and it is 1/10 of the circle. So it's the circle divided by 10. It is a neutral aspect. So the planets in this aspect are pushed to express themselves with the help of each other. They desire to enhance a skill in order to express themselves more clearly. So the decile is kind of like shining a spotlight. It's like, let's say if Venus and the sun are decile, Venus and the sun, so Venus likes to have a good time, likes maybe beauty and art, and the sun likes to focus on confidence and vitality and their place in the world. So Venus is giving the sun a boost and the sun's giving Venus a boost. It's almost like the personality is identifying with being creative, with being artistic, with being beautiful. That may be something that the personality uses to enhance its vitality, and vice versa. Venus will enhance its beauty and radiance through confidence and the vitality that comes from the sun. This can also be an aspect that has to be earned over a good amount of time. Some astrologers interpret it as being an aspect that resonates with Saturn. So this could also potentially change its categorization from neutral to more challenging. But in my experience, it's been neutral as far as I've used it. Then we have the semi-square. So the semi-square is just like what it sounds. It is it's the half of a square. So just like the semi-sextile is half of a sextile, this is the half of the square. So it's 45 degrees and 45 degrees, and it's dividing the circle by 8. So dividing the circle by 8 creates a challenging aspect, okay? This is irritation and competition, which can cause power struggles. So the semi-square, if you think about it, it's just half of the square. So it's like a square, which is, we talked about the square posing difficulties and the planets can't get along. Well, this is a smaller version of that, but it can really denote like a smaller irritation or smaller difficulty with like focusing your energy or accomplishing goals. Then we have the quintile aspect. So the quintile aspect is a very popular one, even though it is a minor aspect. This is one that is popularly used amongst astrologers. It's 72 degrees and is the circle divided by 5. It is a harmonious aspect, and it's a very special, magical, or genius ability, powerful manifestation and creative ability, which can be used in a more alchemical or metaphysical sense. So this energy is really, really promising. In fact, I believe in the chart of Albert Einstein, there was a lot of quintiles. So that's sort of like a genius energy, someone who really just has this transcendent ability to just manifest and understand concepts and things like that. That is going to show where special gifts lie in the chart, where special abilities of manifestation lie in the chart as well. Then we have the Sesquiquadrate. So the Sesquiquadrate is an aspect that is not like divided by a whole number. It's 135 degrees and is divided by 2.7. So it's not a whole number. It's kind of like got the energies of the number 2 plus the 7, the decimal 7. So it's a challenging aspect. It is one that is commonly used by astrologers. However, it is more of a minor aspect, but it's one of the more popular minor aspects. So it's a blind spot or irritation between planets that causes continuous challenges and misunderstandings. It's often known as a crack in the foundation of the chart. So this aspect can come up when there's like something going on in your life that you continuously over time overlook, or you just kind of can't get it right, and it's kind of difficult to pinpoint what's going on because it's a blind spot. And also, this aspect is It's extremely challenging because it is a square. So it's a square aspect, which is 90 degrees plus a semi-square. And that's why when you look at the symbol right here, the symbol is a square and then it has a semi-square attached to it. So it's 90 degrees plus 45 degrees, which equals 135 degrees. So it's like combining the square and the semi-square together. You have a challenge between two planets, but then you also have irritation and competition, which oftentimes when there's irritation and competition plus an underlying challenge, this can make like really unbalanced energy, and it can make it a little bit difficult to actually see what's going on because there's a challenge on top of a challenge, okay? Then we have the quincunx. So the quincunx is also known as a inconjunct, that I will use those terms interchangeably during this session. So the quincunx is 150 degrees. It is the circle divided by 2.4. So again, it's not divided by a whole number, which gives it a little bit of a more complicated flavor. Planets who do not understand each other and therefore compartmentalize each other of their respective areas of life. So what this means is, like, if you have one planet like Saturn and another planet like, let's say, Mercury, Mercury is more intellectual and Saturn is more to deal with hard work. So, you know, Saturn may think that, okay, this is my domain. I have nothing to do with Mercury at all. I don't want to talk to Mercury. I don't want to deal with Mercury. Mercury's in his own field, and Mercury feels the same way. But it creates this disconnect between the planets, and that's why it's called an inconjunct, because the conjunction, remember, is a fusion of two planets together. But the inconjunct is a complete disassociation between the planets, where they don't even understand each other. They find it really hard to connect with each other. So they compartmentalize their respective areas of life. Often the key to solving an issue with one planet can be found in the other through bridging the gap of misunderstanding. So, you know, one planet may be having an issue, like Saturn is working really hard on things, but he's not accomplishing anything. And on the other hand, Mercury is thinking and calculating numbers and doing all these things, but the problem is that Saturn needs more intellect and that Mercury may need more discipline, and they need to kind of talk to each other and acknowledge that each other's there and that their role in the chart is to facilitate the chart holder's life as a whole and not separately. I hope that makes sense. Okay, now moving forward. So the spiritual aspects. The spiritual aspects, these are very interesting and these are very, very mystical. Not a lot of people talk about these aspects because it is widely debated amongst astrologers whether or not they are worthy of being included. But as according to Galactic Astrology, we include harmonics 1 through 12, okay? And this includes the 11th harmonic, 9th, and 7th, which are the spiritual aspects, which are dividing the circle by 11, 9, and 7. So these angles are important to us because they represent different cosmic energies that can be interpreted and expressed by the planets. So number one we have is the elf tile. The elf tile is a circle divided by 11, and it is 32.73 degrees. It is a neutral aspect. So the elf tile is a very, very spiritual aspect because it does represent the number 11. And if you guys are familiar with numerology and angel numbers, 1111 is a powerful manifestation number. The elf tile represents a need to bridge polarities and integrate differences in order to achieve spiritual mastery. This information and more information about this can actually be found on, I believe it's called astrologypapers.com, where a very interesting astrologer goes into detail about the elf tile. He actually created the symbol that I have here. Then we have the novile. So the novile is 40 degrees and it's a circle divided by 9. It's a neutral aspect as well, and it's an initiation or realization that ends one karmic chapter and begins another. So the novile will often show up in the chart where a soul, or maybe an event, if you're looking at an event chart, is developing to a point where this karmic energy is being activated in a higher sense, where you are realizing like a higher capacity and you're being initiated into a new karmic cycle, or a new chapter. Okay, so it's like a spiritual realization that you're having. It's very it can get kind of complicated depending on how far in the series that you go, because a lot of these aspects, like the novile, elftile, septile, even the quintile, can be multiplied by like 2 and 3, and they can extend even farther in the chart, but that's a little bit more complicated. But all of the multiples of this these aspects can be applied in the same way, but will have slightly different effect in terms of, for example, the novile activating realizations and karmic energy in your life. Then we have the septile. So the septile is 51.73 degrees, and it's a circle divided by 7. It is a neutral aspect. It is a spiritual and mystic connection between two planets that can denote psychic abilities or mysterious energies. So this is a very spiritual and psychic aspect. Okay, so it's definitely going to be an aspect that shows like psychic abilities. It can also show where you might kind of know or understand or do things behind the scenes, or be more intuitive about things as well. For example, if you have Venus with septile Mercury, then you might be really keen at reading social situations and maybe even reading people's thoughts, or you might be really good at reading your significant other's thoughts, or you might just really be able to feel and understand social cues and know how to communicate subtly and communicate spiritually in a way that reaches people, but it's not going to be as overt as just like a sextile where Venus and Mercury benefit each other. It's more subvert, it's more quiet and more mystical. Okay. All right, then we have aspect patterns. So the aspect patterns are aspect configurations that often consist of multiple aspects linked together. Okay, so multiple aspects linked together. So this is like a series of aspects. So let's say we'll have like multiple trines, multiple squares, multiple sextiles, and they will all connect together to create an even bigger aspect. These aspects, these patterns are powerhouses of energy and can amplify the aspects and planets involved. They often show specialized gifts and energies or intense challenges to be faced in life. And then in the next few slides, I'm going to go ahead and give some examples of some aspect patterns. And I got these images from astrologycafe.com if you guys want to look those up too. So the first one that we have is the mystic rectangle. The mystic rectangle is two oppositions connected by two trines and two sextiles. So if you look, the red lines are the oppositions. So we've got, what is it? The moon opposite with Pluto, and then we have Mercury opposite with Neptune. And these oppositions, the planets involved are actually connected. So Pluto is involved in an opposition with the moon, and Neptune is involved in an opposition with Mercury. However, Pluto and Neptune are in a sextile, and the moon, which is opposite with Pluto, is involved in a sextile with, a trine with Neptune. And then the moon is also involved in a sextile with Mercury, if we look, and then Mercury is involved in a trine with Pluto. So this is like a difficult energy plus positive aspects as well. So when we think about it, the moon opposite Pluto, so much emotional turmoil going on. And then Mercury with Neptune is maybe escapism through communication or not indirect communication. However, communication is enhanced by the feelings and the emotions. So they're a very intuitive communicator, and they're very creative in the way that they feel. They may have artistic talents because the moon is connected with Neptune, and then Neptune's connected with Pluto, which empowers Neptune, and then it's trine with Mercury, which also empowers Mercury, empowers the speech as well. So there are some difficulties, but within the difficulties, we have benefits as well. Then we have the kite. So it's a grand trine with 2 points forming a sextile to the same point. So a grand trine, which we'll look at in the next slide or two, is actually 3 trines connected to each other. You can see that Jupiter in the second chart connected with Neptune and Venus. So Jupiter, Neptune, and Venus are trine. That's a really beautiful, beautiful aspect. It means that, you know, relationships will be boosted and creative and spiritual, and there's just going to be so much creative love and creative energy and spirituality here. However, Venus is opposite with Uranus. Okay, so Venus is opposite with Uranus, creating a little bit of, you know, friction back and forth. Maybe although the relationship is really beautiful and the creativity is very beautiful and spiritual and expansive, there is some like sporadic or chaotic energy that's coming from Uranus, where suddenly the relationship changes and suddenly different things happen, and maybe relationships cause this person to get into sudden you know, sudden thought changes or sudden changes of mood as well. And then we have the sextile between Uranus and Jupiter, and Uranus and Neptune. So there is a little bit of a save here, because while there's this huge, beautiful trine between Venus, Jupiter, and Neptune, we also have this beautiful Uranian connection here, which is boosting the creativity, because Uranus is very creative as well. It just needs to balance out its energy a little bit better with Venus. Okay. All right. Then we have the Grand Cross and we have the Yod. So the Grand Cross is one of the more difficult energies that you can face in a chart, because it is 2 oppositions which are connected by squares. So the 2 oppositions are here. We have Mars, which is opposite with Neptune. Mars opposite Neptune is kind of difficult, because Mars, whenever Mars acts, they may act irrationally or with unclear decision making, or there may be some things behind the scenes that Mars is doing too, or sometimes Mars has a bunch of energy and then it doesn't have that much energy at all, because Neptune is more dissipation. And then we have Uranus. Uranus is opposite with Venus. So we have this again in a chart. Uranus opposite with Venus. We've already talked about what that creates. So then with these 2 oppositions creating a cross, the intersections then create these trines. So while there's 2 oppositions, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, excuse me, I said trines, squares. There's 4 squares. So Mars square with Uranus is really, really like erratic. It's gonna be, Mars is gonna be changing directions all the time. Like Uranus and Uranus's ideas and innovations are gonna be really aggressive and really kind of crazy, kind of all over the place. This person is not very contained within themselves. And then Uranus goes and squares Neptune. And when Uranus squares Neptune, that is making their inspirations maybe very secretive, very not so forthcoming, not so true. Maybe Uranus stole some ideas from someone. You know, Uranus is doing things in a very shady way. And then Neptune goes ahead and squares Venus. So this is like falling in love and being fooled by love, or fooling yourself into, excuse me, I believe I said Uranus. It's Neptune square with Venus. So Neptune square with Venus, it's like fooling yourself and into being in love, or being blinded from seeing the truth of your relationship. So this is a lot of energy going on. It seems like this person has a lot of creative energy, but it's just very unbalanced and misplaced. Then we have the yod. So the yod is an interesting aspect because it is two quincunxes, which are also known as inconjunctions, connected by a sextile. So like we said, the quincunx is a energy that the planets just kind of don't understand each other and don't want to understand each other. They kind of keep their distance from each other. The quincunx is being activated mostly by Jupiter. So we've got Jupiter as the main center point, and Jupiter is quincunx with Pluto, and then it's also quincunx with the sun. So Pluto quincunx with Jupiter is like, Jupiter is very focused on, perhaps making money, making things happen because it is in the second house here. And then Pluto is towards the eighth house. So Pluto needs to do some deep inner work. And Jupiter might think, no, I just want to focus on making money. I just want to focus on traveling. I want to focus on showing off my wealth and being a person of prestige. But Pluto's like, no. As long as you keep making money, you're still going to have to deal with these deeper issues of psychology and hidden things and taboos and traumas that you don't want to face. And then the sun is also quincunx with Jupiter as well. So the sun here, Jupiter quincunx the sun is like, okay, Jupiter's again making money, right? But the sun is in the seventh house, and the sun is like wants to be in a relationship. The sun shines in relationships. Their partner is the light of their life. Their partner is so bright and so beautiful. They love their partner. The partner brings them confidence, okay? But they're really focused on money. So it's like the partner's like, you need to pay attention to me. I'm important. But the native of this chart might be like, oh, well, I just really need to keep focusing on making money. And this may irritate the partner a little bit because they may overpromise them some things and not deliver on those promises as well. So, then we have the sextile that connects these two planets. So then Pluto is actually sextile with the sun. And this is a really positive thing because even though Jupiter is having those issues with perhaps being a little bit selfish and wanting to focus on themselves, Pluto and the sun are sextile. So the partner is helping this person to evolve spiritually and reach those deeper levels of understanding themselves and transforming psychologically as well. Okay. Now moving towards the grand trine. Okay, the grand trine. So we had mentioned this, I had mentioned this before. The grand trine is 3 connected trines. This is like the ultimate trine aspect, okay? This is like what everyone wishes for in their chart. If you look at a lot of astrology forums and different articles, people say, oh my gosh, the grand trine, someone has this in their chart. They've just got so much creative, beautiful, harmonious energy. They're just gonna get what they want, okay? So we have Mars trine with Saturn, trine with the south node. Very interesting. So Mars trine with Saturn, this is like someone who works really, really hard and they put their energy into it. They put their effort into it. They make things happen. This person is going to get things done. Okay. And they're going to be very responsible with their actions. They're going to dedicate themselves to the task. And this is trine with their south node. So this is related with their past and their past lives. Maybe in their past lives, they work really, really hard, and that makes their beginning in life very easy. It makes their beginning in life very structured. So the earlier part of life, they're going to be able to go, do, manifest, and make things happen for themselves. And this is kind of their foundation to their life, where they're really able to express themselves. Obviously, Mars is in the first house, and then we have Saturn in the fourth house. Okay, and then we have the North Node in the eighth. So the way that this chart is drawn is a little bit different, but Mars, Saturn, and the South Node are all together, making that grand trine. This is really making this person's life very stable and very hardworking, but all of their hard work is going to get rewarded. They're going to get the things that they want, okay? Then we have the T-square. So this is kind of like a fraction of the Grand Cross, but one of the oppositions is missing. Instead, it's just the square. So we have an opposition between, it looks like the moon and the sun, I believe, or the moon, no, the moon and Venus, sorry. So an opposition between the moon and Venus. So, being at home, being comfortable, this person has the moon in the second house. So it's like they like to be secure in their possessions and their belongings and their money. They care a lot about that. If they don't have money, they don't feel secure. Okay. And then Venus is in the eighth house, which is about, kind of revolution, digging deeper, having really close, intimate relationships with people. So they care a lot about how they feel about themselves, and they might have some insecurity that is then kind of triggered by their intimate relationships with close partnerships and close friendships. So they might go back and forth and feel a little bit uncomfortable. And because the moon and Venus are very emotional planets, they're going to be very emotional in nature, maybe a little touchy, maybe a little awkward in social situations too. But to put even more pressure on that, we have the opposition, which is connected, which is squaring. The opposition points are squaring the same planet. So one planet is being squared by two different planets that are connected in an opposition. So, and this planet is Mars. So this can be really difficult because with Venus square Mars, this is like they don't know how to express themselves. Like they don't know how to balance their masculine and feminine energy. It's this always fighting against themselves inside. And then the moon and Mars square is like they don't know how to keep their emotional cool. Every little thing is like kind of irritating them, making them upset, making them feel uncomfortable. And this makes their relationships really difficult to deal with. Maybe they have to, be alone a lot, or maybe their relationships are up and down in terms of emotions. And it can just be really uncomfortable for them in life, unfortunately, when it comes to social relationships, and just taking action and feeling comfortable. All right. So those were the aspect configurations or aspect patterns. Now I want to open the floor up for questions. Does anyone have any questions about the material that we covered?
I like how everything was well put. I like when you were talking about the sextiles and how the planets are affected. Like it was like a story between was it Venus and who was it, Venus and Saturn?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. And how they have like either the planets are against each other or the planets are in harmony.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was called decile. So decile is neutral, as you were talking about, and sextile is harmony.
Mm-hmm.
So I like how it's like a story with the planets, and also it can correlate to people because well, it was a planet, but the person would be like thinking about money and would be too like um too obsessed over money. But then the other planet or the other person would say, just relax, everything is going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the numbers, it's like it can be a lot for my mind to ingest. But I
Mm-hmm.
was picturing it the best way possible in my mind.
Yeah, that's a really good way to think of things because, the point of this session, the point of this module is to introduce aspects in a way that is understandable and enjoyable. And that's why I kind of use the personalities, like saying, for example, in a sextile, the two planets are good friends, or in a semi-sextile, it's more of like a business partnership or a co-worker, colleague relationship, because it allows you to process it in a way that's not so mathematical and so intimidating and so cut and dry, because these interpretations can you know, they're multi-layered in their interpretation, they're multi-layered in the effects that they will have in the chart. So I'm really happy that you enjoyed that and that you're, you know, kind of grasping this material. I will be posting this on my YouTube probably in the next few weeks. I will let you guys know when I do that so you can look back over and rewatch it again. And I do plan on putting out some astrology PDFs, maybe an astrology ebook, and I might do a more in-depth course at some point as well. So you know, just wait for that. And you can also ask questions if you know, if you have difficulties with the material. So thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have another question?
Just want to say that because I haven't taken the first and second, this is a kind of new to me, but this reminds me of my physics class in my high school, but except it's a lot more interesting and fun. And I really, you know, there's really a lot of information out here. I'm definitely, you know, subscribing and, you know, going through your, you know, if you're gonna upload it on YouTube, I'll definitely go over them. And well, I have a question. What type of chart is this? Is this because I'm using a natal chart right now to look at my life path and everything, but I'm curious what type of chart we are studying.
So what I use typically in my charts are the equal house system, and I use the sidereal calculation. So that is based on the stars. Since you didn't take module 1 and module 2, that is explained, and I will be uploading that to my YouTube. I will let you guys know when that's up on YouTube, but it will explain like you know, why I choose that system and how it works. And also the next class that we do in module 4, I'll be going over the different kinds of charts because there's a lot of different ways that you can calculate the chart and ways you can do it. Specifically for me, I use equal house system and the sidereal system to calculate my charts. But here, if we go back, the way that these are calculated, I believe this is Placidus, but if you are curious about that, I can give you the website that I got these images from. It's Astrology Cafe, and I'll send you the link with the information. So you can actually see, you know, how they calculate their charts, because I think it has that information there. And then also, like, if you guys want to know who the people are, because some of these are like celebrity charts, if you wanted to know, then you can look at that as well. I just didn't include the names because it wouldn't fit, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, does anyone else have a question?
Hey, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I did take the first 2 classes, and I honestly, there was a point during the presentation where I literally was like, "Oh my God, I get it."
Wow.
Like literally the way you explained it, plus, you know, the information. And I have been studying astrology for a while, but like, I still didn't really get aspects. But like you explained it so well, like literally I'm absolutely blown that this was just a little piece, like you said in the beginning, you know, like the part that helps you form the sentences. And I don't know, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm so happy that it's been, you know, this experience of absorbing the knowledge, because I know for me, when I started out in astrology too, a lot of the material is so redundant and it's not very inspiring or creative, and you kind of have to stretch your brain a little bit or repeat it over and over again to get those concepts and the fundamentals down. So that's why I created this, to be more more open, more lighthearted, more free, and so that you guys could get the meaning of it without feeling so intimidated. So I'm really happy that it's clicking for you, Ren. Thank you for attending all of the classes. So happy to have you here. Thank you. Alrighty. Any other questions before we close out?
I was I was taking notes, and I was trying to write down the different things, the different this tile, non-nubile and the neutral. This is my first time with numerology and astrology combined together. Um, I tried my best to understand everything, and I was trying to keep up. Um, but my question is, with numerology, does the, do you divide most of the numbers, or is there other things like multiplying, or is it just division?
So in order to get the aspects, we divide the circle. So the circle is a 360 degrees, and we will divide it by the numbers 1 through 12. And then I mentioned that the inconjunct and the sesquiquadrate are, 2.7 and 2.4. So those are a little bit different. So what you do is you take the circle 360 degrees and you divide it by itself, which is 360 degrees, you get 1, or that translates over in astrology to 0, which is the aspect of the conjunction. And then you divide it by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. And that creates all of the conjunctions. So when I showed like the, let me see if I can go back and show you guys. When I showed the, oh my gosh, fractions. When I showed the fractions, that's the division. So think of the 1 as 360 degrees. We just use 1 because it's like one circle. Okay, so we divide that by 11 or divide that by 9 or 7 or whatever the number is, and you will get the aspect. But that's just a way of thinking about it, as to like think of the fractions of a circle. So it's, you don't have to like know that to a T in order to understand the aspects, but it does help. And in terms of the numerology aspect of it, numerology does play a role in astrology. So astrology deals with numbers and calculations and things like that. So if you do know a little bit of numerology, that is very helpful. Luckily, if you know more astrology and you're trying to learn numerology, numerology is a lot easier because there's just 9 numbers in numerology, and then you have the 10 turns into 1, and then 11, 22, and 33 are like master numbers, but that's a whole nother thing. But don't worry about it too much. Just kind of take it in stride. Just relax. Just allow the meanings of the aspects to just sink in, and you'll be fine. Okay.
Okay, I just wrote down what you just said about the
Mhm.
360 circle and divide it by itself, and you also have the numbers 1 through 12, and that dividing that creates a conjunction. Okay, I
Yeah,
got it.
yeah. All right. And um, did Emily have a question? I saw you unmute yourself earlier. Did you have a question, Emily? Emily? Emily?
Yes, Emily. I just wanted to say that this was really great. And I really appreciate you doing this for all of us.
Yeah, of course. I'm really happy that you enjoyed it, and I'm happy that you guys came. It's exciting, and I love putting on these presentations because I love astrology and I love sharing the joy of it with you guys, because I think there's a lot of stagnancy in the field where people aren't really approaching it from like a joyous and more creative perspective. So I'm happy that you guys enjoyed my presentation, and I hope that you guys learned a lot.